Hello, everyone, and welcome to the debut episode of the Bombers Beat podcast. I am your host, Jaime Eisner, and I'm going to bring you daily New York Yankees content, commentary, and more on this podcast feed and on YouTube. So please check that out, and I will get into a little bit more of what I hope to accomplish with this podcast as we get to the end of the show. But let's get right into the baseball side of things right now. And coming off a loss for the New York Yankees, they fall to the Arizona Diamondbacks by a score of 7-5 in a game that they had some control of late. They were up 4-2 in this game, and they had a disastrous eighth inning. And I think if we're going to talk about what we want to take away from this game, there's a lot to talk about, but I want to start with the bullpen because I think there are a few different elements that are really interesting to talk about if you're a Yankees fan. Obviously, let's start with something positive. Let's start with how good Fernando Cruz looked. Now, after his first start where he was a little shaky coming out of the bullpen, got settled down, got out of the inning, he was flat out dominant with his splitter in this game. 2 innings, 4 strikeouts, no hits, no walks allowed. And we saw a lot of swords, a lot of swings and misses on that splitter. And that is going to be his, it's not really even a secret weapon. Like, that's his weapon. And that was the thing that intrigued the Yankees the most when they made that deal for him with the Cincinnati Reds. And I'm not surprised to see him throwing almost exclusively that splitter so far because that is by far his best pitch. He is dominant with that pitch, and he'll mix in a few other things as well, but that's his bread and butter. If you watch the game, you could kind of see how much late break it has on it. You see hitters come and try to attack it. The motion looks like it's going to be a fastball motion coming out, and they react to it. And it leads to some really, really aggressive and, quite frankly, some brutal swings from the Arizona Diamondbacks. And you're going to see a lot of that. And if Fernando Cruz, I imagine that the Yankees are going to tell him to use that splitter even more than he has before. And I'm really interested to see now. He's got 2 games under his belt with the Yankees. Want to kind of see as we get to that, 7, 8, 9, 10 game mark, start to look at the pitch mix, start to look at the percentages, because if there's one thing the Yankees have done really well, it is telling you to use 1 or 2 of your specific pitches. I know what's the rumor? It's always usually sweeper sinker. Oh, by the way, Adam Ottavino is back in town. Sinker sweeper. But in this case, it's a dynamic splitter. And I'm excited to kind of see if he can continue to be a high leverage piece of the bullpen. Got the 6th and 7th innings in this game and set the Yankees up really well. The problem is what happened afterward. And let's talk about the negative side of what happened in this game. And obviously we'll talk about Mark Leiter. We'll talk about the grand slam. But this inning really started with a decision to bring in Tim Hill. And you brought in Tim Hill to face, in theory, Alek Thomas, but he was quickly pitch hit for Randal Grichuk, and a Yankee killer, Randal Grichuk, by the way, who immediately greets him with a double. Gerardo Perdomo comes in, another single right there. You're able to get Corbin Carroll out on a force out there. Obviously, you didn't have a chance to double play with his speed. But then at that point, you may have to make another decision. So the Tim Hill decision did not work. They pitch hit for the lefty. They bring in Grichuk. You got 2 guys on base. You get 1 out. You go with Mark Leiter, who had got some monster outs for them in the postseason last year. He was really good in his other. He was really good both of his starts, but he was really good in the previous game. And this is where things really started to come off the rails, and it starts with the walks. Immediately comes in, walks Ketel Marte. Immediately comes in, walks Pavin Smith. You get Josh Naylor to strike out swinging, and then you're kind of in that spot here where this is the game. Bases loaded, 2 outs. You have a 2-run lead. What's going to happen? And, he starts out with, it was a little erratic in that start. Starts out with a ball, drops a sinker just off the plate. Then he drops in another sinker high, which is called a strike. Then he went to his off-speed pitch, which is really interesting, which is splitter ball in the dirt, just a classic dirt ball there. But as was noted on the broadcast, I believe by Paul O'Neill, that Eugenio Suarez did not react at all, did not twitch, did not move, did not shake, did not in any capacity put himself in a position where it looked like he was going to swing at that. Come back with another sinker for the fourth pitch, get a swinging strike. Again, both of those pitches were outside but fairly up in the zone. But he was able to get away with both a called strike and a swinging strike on that splitter. And the problem is he was sitting. Suarez was sitting on that splitter. And that fifth pitch of the at-bat, 83.8 miles an hour on the velocity, on the inside of the plate, but a little bit about thigh high, and it goes a long way. It is a grand slam to arguably the hottest hitter in baseball, definitely the hottest hitter in the National League, in Eugenio Suarez. Launches at 376 feet to left field, and they take a 7-4 lead. And it's, watching that pitch come off the bat, at first it's interesting because there is not a lot of reaction from anybody. You don't hear a lot of reaction from the fans right away. You don't see Mark Leiter lose it. You don't see Eugenio Suarez start to celebrate. Cody Bellinger's in left field after some defensive replacements there late, and it starts to go back on the wall. But, when you get that feeling when you're watching the broadcast, where you're watching that outfielder keep going and keep going and keep going, and you're like, I don't know if he's going to stop. I don't know if he's going to get there. And ultimately he didn't. And, Ben Rice hits a home run in the bottom of the ninth inning and brings it within one, but there was 2 outs at that point. Nice to see him hit a homer off the lefty AJ Puck, but overall, obviously rough game for the Yankees. In general, they had 8 total base runners, 5 hits in the game, and really 5 hits from 3 total players. You got Volpe got a home run. You got 2 hits. You got a home run and 2 hits from Jason Dominguez, who we'll talk about in a second, because I think that is a real bright spot that I think we need to have a discussion about here on today's show. And Ben Rice, another 2 hits and a home run, as we talked about there in the ninth, who's also looked out pretty well so far this year. Will Warren, 5 innings, 1 hit, 4 walks, 2 earned runs. Really like to see him get out of the fifth. Had to overcome some adversity there, and we had seen a couple different times with both Max Fried and with Marcus Stroman in that opening series of starters not being able to get that third out in the 5th inning, not being able to quote-unquote qualify for the win. Both, obviously the Yankees won both of those games, but in this case it was good to see a young pitcher who, struggled a little bit early to get everything together, gives up a home run, walks 4 guys, get out of a key spot. And it was nice to see Aaron Boone give him that opportunity. And, I really like to see what Will Warren can bring to this team. He's been not a top prospect, but among the top prospects in the Yankees organizations for a couple years now, especially among starting pitchers. And they're going to lean on him pretty heavily. This rotation is going to still need to be a makeshift rotation as they continue to overcome the injuries that have already happened. Hopefully Clark Schmidt should be back soon. Luis Heel will be back in a few months, but you know how injury optimism can be. So Will Warren is going to play, regardless of those guys. Will Warren is going to play a key role this season. Other keynotes in this game too. Adam Ottavino was the signing with Devin Williams going on paternity leave. He gets into this game, strike out a walk over 2/3 of an inning. But to me, I think I take a look at this game and I look at the takeaways was the bullpen. You're not going to not use Tim Hill. You're not going to not use Mark Leiter going forward. It was a rough night at the office against the Diamondbacks, who seem to have this thing with the 8th inning so far this season of just absolutely dominating. But you're not really going to change that. So let's talk about some stuff that does matter going forward. And we already talked about Fernando Cruz, and I think that is going to matter. Adding another high-leverage arm in the bullpen that you trust with swing and miss stuff is always what you need. And I really like what I've seen from him through his first few games here with the Yankees. Obviously, this was as good of a performance as you can reasonably ask for out of a bullpen for him, and given that extended role in those key moments. So I'm really excited to see how he develops going forward. This was a piece that if you looked at his ERA when the trade happened, you were probably like, what is this? What is this about? Is this guy going to really be anything more than just a depth piece? But they saw something, and they saw something with that special splitter of his. And I'm excited to see if that can then start to be a true back end of the bullpen type of piece. And Jason Dominguez, this is somebody that I think if you're a Yankees fan, we've been waiting a long, long time for Jason Dominguez. And, part of it's because the organization signed him at such a young age that he feels like he's been around forever. And he feels like he's been the top prospect in the Yankees organization for a while. Had okay opening series, against Milwaukee. Not a lot to write home about. He did walk, which was good. He drew 3 walks in that opening series, which is something you want to see. 1 hit. Couple issues in left field, let's say. I mean, nothing major. He had that bobble on what should have been a routine out. Again, he still made the play. There was 1 hit, and I forget who it was. There was a hit late in the game that had like a 95% catch probability that he just let kind of bounce in front of him, play it off the bounce. A catch that major league left fielders need to make, and he didn't even really attempt to make it. Still doesn't look super comfortable out there in left, but he's going to have to grow into that role. And, Aaron Boone, I believe, told John Boy on Wednesday, the John Boy podcast, is that, he's going to take advantage of having an elite glove like Trent Grisham late in games where they're able to move, as you've seen a couple times this year, move Cody Bellinger over to left field and put Trent Grisham in center. And he's going to take advantage of those opportunities, particularly, after Jason Dominguez has 3 at-bats in a game. And you're going to see a lot of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Trust me, anybody who watched the Yankees last year knows any help that you can get on the defensive side is warranted. And as we saw at times, even in that blowout game against Milwaukee, the awesome home run game of watching little leaguers try to play defense out there. Now, they are a lot better defensively than they were last year, at least on paper. They've got the personnel to be better. But Jason Dominguez is going to be the guy that you look at. He's the guy that right now stands out, as the, I would say, weak link on defense. Now, you can hide a weak link in left field. You can live with that. But it's going to be interesting to see how he continues to grow into that role. But I really, really like seeing him get going at the plate. As a young guy that needs a lot of confidence, especially when your team is doing really well, nobody was going to say anything after only getting 1 hit in the opening series when things went as well as they did for the New York Yankees against Milwaukee. But it was good to see him get a couple hits here. Good to see him homer, get some of that confidence, because you start to look at what the future can hold for him and this team. If he can develop into a middle-of-the-lineup piece for them, and again, it's not going to happen here in April, but if he can develop into that role for next season or years beyond, they're going to be in a really, really good situation. And he's still a pretty young player, despite the fact that we've been talking about him for so long. He's got a lot of power, better as a left-handed bat than a right-handed bat. I know he's a switch, but the power is from the left side of the plate, but I was really excited to see him have a good game. Other kind of notes that we want to touch on before we kind of wrap things up for this week, and then, for today, and then kind of explain what this podcast is going to be going forward. Good to see Volpe get another home run here. Some good power from him so far early this season. I know I feel like I want to just ban the word torpedo. I'm sick of hearing torpedo bats. I'm sure you are as well, so I'm not going to talk about it as much. It's been a point that's been beaten to death, but it's good to see Volpe off of a good start offensively. Obviously, it's been a lot of power so far, so kind of a little bit more reminiscent of a couple seasons ago. As you start to look at what he's been able to do so far this season, he's got, what does he have here? He's got 3 hits. He's got 3 hits, and all 3 are home runs so far. So 3 hits, 2 walks this season. All 3 are home runs. So he's making powerful contact with the ball again. So we'll kind of see how that continues to roll for him. And then Ben Rice, who continues to hit well. And again, hitting a home run off a lefty late in that game is big. And you saw Aaron Boone continue to have some confidence in Ben Rice to stay in the game against left-handed pitching in key moments. Obviously, the 9th inning with 2 outs wasn't that necessarily of a key of a moment at that point. But earlier in the game, when they had the opportunity to pitch hit for him with a right-handed batter against a lefty, they chose not to. So if he is able to continue to not only display the power that he showed in spring training and he showed so far early this season, but if he can do it against left-handed pitchers as well and be able to not be a platoon guy and not have to be a late game, be pitch hit for late, that's going to be a huge plus for the Yankees lineup. So that kind of wraps up what they did. They got the Arizona Diamondbacks once again, game 2 tonight at 7:05 Eastern. It'll be Zach Gallen, who started on opening day. Both opening day starters are going in this one. Zach Gallen and Carlos Rodon. Rodon had a fairly strong start in his opening day. Hopefully he can continue to go off of that. Gallen roughed up a little bit in his debut, but we'll see if he's able to bounce back in this start. But as we kind of wrap things up here, let me kind of break down what I hope to accomplish on this Bombers Beat podcast going forward. This is going to be a daily podcast. We're just going to break down the games, key trends, key storylines. Obviously, a lot has already happened this season. This being the first podcast, we would have talked about Giancarlo's elbows. We would have talked about the torpedo bats. We would have talked about all these other things. These are things that will naturally come up during the season as things happen. My goal is to keep these in the 15 to 20 minute range. That way it can be a nice quick hit daily podcast option for you. If we have a guest or if there's something that's just particularly really trend worthy, we might push it closer to 30 plus minutes, but I would like to keep these podcasts in the 15 to 20 minutes, be a quick range for you, whether you're driving to work, you're listening, to podcasts on, your phone at the office, your phone at home. I know I'm a remote worker as well, so I listen to podcasts throughout the day, and so I want to kind of make this be a quick hit for you to kind of add to your rotation. And hopefully you'll continue to join me on this journey throughout this season and beyond, and we'll have certain Q&A times. We'll have times where you can write in. I want it to be interactive as well. But the goal of this is just to give you your Yankees fix every single day in a tight, compact 15 to 20 minute nugget. That way you can listen to it and be able to consume it before the next game. Because it's baseball. A lot changes. We saw what happened last night. All could change today. I know we've had 2 off days already to start the season for the Yankees, but it's going to be another week before we get another off day here for the guys. So I'm excited to bring this to you every single day. I am very open to any of your feedback, your thoughts, suggestions, questions that you would like me to answer, anything of that nature. So thank you again for joining me on this debut episode, and I will be back tomorrow.